yeah, we feel more stable, and that equals strong. And if anything you lose in one joint or anything you lose in one muscle affects other muscles in your body. Nothing ever stands alone. You are always working a system, and we want to keep our movements going for as long as we can, keep whatever joint action as long as we can, for safety reasons, for living pain-free, for having fun and living life. And bodies adapt. I've seen many people make massive changes. You can be 80, you can be 90, you still can change.
In this episode, I'm happy to be welcoming Rachel Tyler, a biomechanics and movement specialist whose passion for foot function and whole body alignment has helped countless people move and feel better. Rachel brings a wealth of knowledge from her background in Pilates, nutritious movement, anatomy and motion, and neurokinetic therapy. Today, we'll explore the fascinating connection between your feet and the rest of your body, how the way you walk, stand, and move affects your overall health, and how addressing foot function can have surprising ripple effects throughout the entire body. By the end of this conversation, you'll understand why sore feet or back pain might not just be about your feet or back, and you'll gain practical tools to start improving your movement patterns today. Whether you're dealing with discomfort, looking to walk better, or simply curious about how small changes can make a big difference, this episode will inspire you to see movement and your feet in a whole new way. What made you first become interested in biomechanics?
I fell into it all, actually. My background, my degree is in physics, and I went and I was a physics teacher for 14 years in secondary schools. Yeah, I love all that, like how things work and the intricacies of things. But then when my kids were babies, when I had 2 babies at home and a toddler, so I had three kids under 2, I realized that going back to school was just not going to work. But I really wanted to move. I felt had a very uncomfortable pregnancy, especially the second one. Had twins, so it was a big carry.
That explains the 3 under the age of 2 then. Yes, otherwise that would be amazing.
That would really work. Yeah. So I got into Pilates because, well, actually I was doing yoga, but then I got into I thought I trained to be a Pilates teacher just as a way to make a bit of money maybe, but really just move more myself and try and move better and try and stop being in so much pain. My back was killing me after the twin pregnancy. So I trained as a Pilates teacher, and I did that for not very long before I discovered Katie Bowman and restorative exercise, and realized that was the light bulb that I needed, that it wasn't just about moving your body more, but it's about moving the individual parts of your body more. And by by increasing the range of each joint, you have a knock-on effect to every joint next to it, and your whole biomechanics changes. And she does it very carefully in that you meet everybody where it's at, every body system where it's at, and you don't push it far out to that point. You just move within your movement boundaries, and by doing that, your boundaries increase. Your boundaries get wider. And so then I trained to be a restorative exercise specialist. We call them res. And that's what really drove me for quite a few years. But then with all that, I learned a lot of anatomy. And so I discovered other movement teachers. I did an anatomy and motion with Gary Ward, which is really a photographing or having a look at the body through 5 different phases of walking, 5 phases when your foot is on the ground. There's 5 different body positions and foot positions every moment where your foot is on the ground in walking. And he has mapped out the whole rest of the body, how it should fit going up from that foot. And then through that, you can see people's limitations. Like if you slow down their walking, like you film their walking and then pause, freeze frame at each point of their walking, you can see where their imbalances might be, where their limitations are. And then you go in to try and fix those by putting the foot into a certain position and then the body into a position above it, trying to move, trying to increase the ranges there. Like, so just trying to decrease tension in the muscles, decompress joints by moving them around, but in walking shapes, in gait shapes. I also did neurokinetic therapy, which is I've done all the levels, which is a form of muscle testing where you use the nervous system. So you find what muscles in the body are neurologically weak, which ones are neurologically strong. Not saying that those muscles are strong or those muscles are weak, but that your brain doesn't connect to them very well. So using that, you can, let's say, test someone around someone's knee and see which muscles around that knee are overworking and which ones are underworking, and then rejig the balance, realign the muscles, make them work either by massage or just moving them in and out of range. You can make muscles relax, and then you want to invigorate the muscles that are neurologically weak in that pattern. Through all of these things, anatomy and motion and neurokinetic therapy, you learn a lot about the body's movement systems. So there are 5. It depends what you look at, but a lot of people think that there are 5 different movement systems. And for example, one of them is the deep longitudinal system, and that goes from the foot all the way up the back of the leg, up the back. And so you could see then how muscles in the body connect. So if you had a foot that was very flat, let's say, and your arch is very close to the ground, the muscles at the bottom of the foot are long, then you might find an issue further up the leg that has an impact on. So you might find a muscle that is too tight because the bottom of the foot is too loose. So you have you kind of, the tension patterns are shared along those lines. So knowing all of those subsystems comes into both neurokinetic therapy and anatomy and motion. You look at the whole body as a system, which kind of fits in with my physics background, because I love that. Something happens and therefore that happens.
And forces as well.
Forces,
back to physics,
Lots of levers, lots of pulley systems, over the knee. Something gets, you bend your knee, the muscles below the knee are lengthened, the muscles above the knee are lengthened, and the front, and then at the back they're shortened. It all kind of makes sense.
So you literally have come at it from all angles. So you've just pitched yourself as a super expert.
No, I definitely wouldn't say that. Always learning.
But that's what's so important as well. And what it sounds like from the way you've sort of built up is that each piece of learning has then consolidated what you've learned about before, and then perhaps made sense of it in a slightly different way. And I think that's the most beneficial thing, is to be able to look at the problem, whatever it is, from a whole variety of angles, and by learning from different people's views of things, that's how you get there. So then you're now forming the Rachel Tyler version of how you see that, and that's how I met you, was through Instagram, and that's what I learned from you, from all your posts and your way of looking at things. So a lot of what you post about is particularly about feet and foot function. So what sort of started that interest? Was that one of those courses particularly, by the sounds of it? Although Katie Bowman talks a lot about feet as well.
She has a healthy foot course. I think it's probably stemmed from the restorative exercise, which she calls herself nutritious movement now, with Katie Bowman. You kind of learn from her. I learned from her that the foot is your foundation, and your body rises up from there, from the ground, and whatever foot shape you have determines the body shape above it. But then that also is very much what anatomy and motion is about, is the same thing. So your contact with the ground, the foot contact with the ground, and the position of the joints within the feet then determine the position of the joints above the foot, up the leg, mean, all the way, all in your whole entire body. So yeah, they're all the same thing really, and I suppose that's what it was. I have actually, my other big love is pelvic floor. I think probably through being, through pregnancies myself, and also through my client base. I see a lot of women. I think a lot of people do. I think women are probably have more time, but also are more body aware, more likely to come to get help with issues with their body, though that is changing. We are seeing a lot more men now, which is great. So then, there's pelvic floor issues because women have pregnancies, children, and they have different setup in their pelvis area. Feet I find fascinating, and actually a lot of my work is determined around feet. And people, if they come to see me about an issue with their hip or their back or their shoulder, I will always look at how they stand and how their feet move, and see that their feet movement correspond to certain movement above in their body, but also what their movements in their body, what that does to their feet. It goes both ways. Your body changes your shape of your feet, and your foot shape changes the shape of your body.
So let's dive into that a little bit, because it's quite a complex thing not complex, but sort of almost unexpected thing to understand. I think a lot of people don't think about their feet very much.
No.
Because maybe because they're so small in relation to the rest of the body. Maybe when people are sitting quite a lot, they are not in use so much, and therefore not thought of so much. And obviously that can bring its own problems with then standing on them and trying to do things on them all of a sudden, particularly, sitting in an office for 8 hours, as people have to do, and then going for a run and getting foot problems and so on. But also I think there's an expectation that, they'll just carry us, or we just don't even think about it. So do people who come to you with foot issues, do they find it a bit unexpected that you're then looking at everywhere else in their body? Because often people tend to go to someone to say, I've got a thing with my, something's wrong with my whatever, shoulder, knee, whatever. And there's an expectation that they'll be treated in that place only, because that's the thing that is giving them pain. So with the feet, do they find it quite strange that you're looking at everything?
Yes, they definitely do. They definitely do. But through the assessments that I do when they're in my clinic, is that it then makes sense to them, because I will say, okay, you need to stand there, your feet, how you normally stand, and then I will get them to move their upper bodies. Let's say they have come about, let's say it's a back pain. So I'll say, okay, you want to side bend each way, and then twist your torso each way. And then I would show them first that what movements I would expect to see in their feet when they're doing those upper body movements. So then they can see why I then might look at their feet. I mean, it's not always a foot issue. It's definitely not always a foot issue, but I definitely would not rule out the feet. But yeah, most things, I mean, if it's a lower body, then your feet will need to be involved. You can't rehab your hip while you're sitting in a chair. You have to be standing up. So then your foot has a contact with the ground, and the contact that your foot has with the ground matters to rehab that hip. But yeah, you might have something in your upper body that hasn't come from the feet, but it's quite often got something to do with it. How you stand has often something to do with it, and so then your feet need to be taken into account. If you wear shoes with heels a lot, then your body weight is forward on your feet, your pelvis is forward, your upper back body is probably a bit further back, and your head is forward, and that's going to have a big impact on your neck or your upper body posture.
And on that, so a heel being anything that's higher at the back than the front.
Yes, any rise from in your shoe at all. Yeah, so we call barefoot shoes 0 drop. So it's usually the drop height we talk about.
And you're an advocate of barefoot shoes, are you?
Do you know, I am.
But I can hear a but.
Yeah, there's a but. I've worn barefoot shoes for 10 years. I don't wear any shoes that are not barefoot. I think I couldn't fit into them. They would be so massive in size, but to get the width of my now very wide feet in. I don't think they look particularly wide, mind you, but anyway, they are wider. But it's more that because they don't allow for spread of the toes, shoes that taper in at the toe. But yeah, I have seen, I don't think barefoot shoes are always, I wouldn't be militant about making people wear them.
No.
It's far too much for a lot of people to go in wearing them. And I've seen people who wear barefoot shoes have serious foot, ankle, or knee issues that haven't arisen from the shoes, but the shoes have it's not like the shoes have fixed all their problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do encourage people to wear shoes that their feet can feel the ground more, and they haven't got a lift to the heel, and they don't squash their toes in.
And also being barefoot at home more often.
Being barefoot at home, but really being barefoot at home is almost the same as wearing shoes in a way, because our floors are so flat. So really it's standing on rough, uneven, knobbly surfaces, and sharp, standing on things. If you stand on something and it's uncomfortable, you want to be standing on that more.
I love that. And that's to do with the sensitivity of your feet and those nerve endings, isn't it? And making sure that connection with the brain is happening.
Mm-hmm. They need to be stimulated. Yeah.
I think probably just the very fact that the base of your feet is so far from your brain, you kind of don't think about that absolutely key connection. And yet it's the first thing that tells our brain what everything else should be doing.
Absolutely.
And yet
there
we cover it up.
Our hands, so it really matters what your feet feel.
Yeah. So I suppose starting off barefoot at home is, if you find like you've got the very, very sensitive feet, then, starting there at least, and then maybe venturing outside a little bit, doing it a bit more in the summer, feeling okay about being barefoot a bit more would make sense.
Definitely. I do find myself saying a lot to my clients, if it feels uncomfortable and it feels horrible, do it more.
I bet they love you for that.
They love it. They love it.
It is hard to have that, shift from something, if it's uncomfortable, I shouldn't do it, to sometimes if it's uncomfortable, not agony and extreme pain ever, but if it's uncomfortable, it might be telling you something about the fact that you're shying away from that discomfort for a reason, and that you're into sort of protection mode. And that we all know protection mode, both mentally and physically, can keep us away from, as you say, the stuff that we absolutely need. Yeah.
I think when the penny drops there, it doesn't really, that's it. You view everything very differently.
Yes.
And there is no going back. But yeah, some people do still need convincing, because we obviously don't want pain.
No.
Obviously, no.
But
if let's say, I don't know, you wake up one morning and your neck is sore, holding it still all day is not going to be the answer. Moving it is going to be the answer. Not moving it violently around, but gentle, mindful movements will fix it. And not just of your neck, because if your neck hurts, you want to be moving your rib cage and your pelvis, because you want to actually move the whole spine. Right? Moving your rib cage, you move your neck. And just as an aside, it sounds quite like I was saying, right, just move your neck around. I would do a lot of torso movements, but the same thing. You want to ease movement back in.
Just taking a quick pause because I want to tell you about a new offer exclusively for listeners of this podcast. If you'd like to improve your mobility, strength, and learn more about moving well in daily life now and to train for your 90s, come and move with me in the Reclaim Movement membership. There's weekly live coaching in term time with hundreds of replays available, as well as hordes of 5 and 10 minute mini movement videos to follow throughout your day. I'm offering you a 15% discount on your first month's membership on top of the 7-day free trial. Go to reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to create your account and quote the code podcast15. Let's move together to feel better and keep doing all the things you love. Yeah. So give me a couple of examples then. Let's talk about something in the foot that you commonly see as an issue that is actually coming from something further up the chain, let's say around the hip area,
Mhm.
and how you would look at someone and what you would look to see, and some basics, because obviously every case is unique, it's very
Yeah.
different, but if you can generalize, how you would get that person to change the movement around the hip,
Mhm.
that might then affect the foot.
So I might have someone who has feet that hurt. Let's say their feet are quite flat. If and so they're meaning that the arches are low when they're standing still. I would I'd like to see how, if their body, if their pelvis primarily can change the shape of their feet. So I'd get them to stand still with their feet lined up and then just rotate their whole body, turn to look over their
Yep.
shoulder one way and then turn to look over the shoulder the other way. And I would want to see there that their feet move, that their arches lift and lower. So if you turn and look over your right shoulder,
Mhm.
first of all, your weight should go onto your right foot,
Yeah.
shouldn't be left on your left foot.
Okay.
So you go onto your right foot and your right foot arch should lift up so that the big toe knuckle would stay on the ground and your heel's obviously still on the ground. And then you get this pull of all the muscles going up. Because, unlike a lot of people think that the arch is a structure of the foot, it's not the structure of the foot, it's tension in the muscles of the feet. So it should form and it should unform. And um, and it's fine, whatever your foot looks like when it's still, but that rotation of your pelvis should lift and lower
So
your
can I,
arch.
so just to ask us specific about that. So
Hmm.
people obviously feel like they are born with a high arch, flat foot,
Mhm.
no arch. Can that change through life?
Definitely, definitely. Muscles are extremely adaptable, and there is no age limit to being able to adapt your muscles and change the tension in them. And remember, we don't want them really tense. We want them to be able to lengthen as well as shorten. But yeah, that can be done anytime. People are born with some genetic dispositions towards things. Like if you are born with joint laxity, you you're going to have right you're going
That's
to
me.
that's you you're going to have more flexibility in certain joints, not necessarily all of
Yeah,
them, and so then you have to work a bit harder to
to
find
strengthen.
tension.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to be stretching loads because you are
yeah.
already stretchy.
Because then you become a spaghetti wobbly
Yes,
mess,
then you'll just be
and
flopping all over the
like I
ground.
did, you
Yeah.
go running on that, and then you get into years of pain. So no,
Right.
definitely not.
No, definitely not. But definitely you can change. Everybody could change and quite quickly. Muscles are, it doesn't take long for a muscle to, reform. So yeah, you are going back to that person,
Yeah.
they would rotate and their pelvis. And if I saw that when they rotate their pelvis, their arches don't lift and lower, then I would think, okay, there's an issue here, possibly up the leg, in the hips. Like there's a spiraling down the leg that isn't there. So I would look at their hips and see how the rotation of their hip, the hip being the femur, the thigh bone going into the pelvis. I would see how that how that thigh bone can rotate in the pelvis socket and get that working properly, either with muscle testing and exercises. And then you want that thigh bone to also be able to rotate down to the ankle. So then you might actually just by practice get someone to turn and look over each shoulder, let the arch lift, and just practice exactly the assessment. Just get them to do it loads, because it doesn't take it, but through repetition our brains connect to our body just by
By
doing it
Did you
loads.
say by 3 repetitions?
Oh no, just by repetition. No,
I
no,
was
no.
like, really?
Loads and loads of
Yes, I was
repetitions.
going to say not in my experience, but yeah,
No, quite
yeah,
a few hundred repetitions.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah. No, that's really. And so then someone's also starting to understand that connection between the
Yeah.
foot and the
Yes,
hip,
yes.
understanding the importance. So that kind of also goes back to, what are they, from my lens, what are they doing or not doing in daily life that
Mhm.
involves those type of movements. And, twisting, if we just simplistically say what you're talking about in terms of twisting, um, isn't something we have to do very much in daily life, because we often will turn our whole body to the
Mhm.
thing in front of us rather than twisting to get the thing.
You're absolutely right.
And therefore we lose that spiraling. And
Mhm.
we're going to come on and talk about walking in a bit, but a lot of the walking pattern involves it's necessary to be twisting.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about, if you like walking, or if you love walking, but if someone who doesn't walk so much, then again that's actually losing some of the twist that we
Yes,
need.
and it's not the twisting of the whole body that your body needs when walking. It's your pelvis twisting one way while your rib cage twists the other way. And then because of the nature of you're looking forward when you walk, so your head is still, so your neck is also, or your head is effectively twisting. Because if your rib cage rotates left, it's it it results
It's
in what looks
working
like
against it. Yeah.
a rotation of your head right, for your head not to move. So yeah, parts need to move against each other. So I do a lot of that in my classes as well, is
Okay.
moving one thing without moving the thing next to it, or moving that one thing while the thing next to it moves the other way. We kind of need to do it, need to practice it, but also we want our brains to get it.
So just in that, because that is super, I'm really interested in the nervous system, because again, a bit like sort of taking the feet for granted until suddenly they're agony, and you don't even think about the fact, you think about it being a thing that's wrong in your foot and
Mhm.
not affected by the rest of your body. I think the same thing applies to the nervous system, where yes, we need it to sort of tell our bodies what to do, is the sort of the basic, subconscious thought about it. But understanding that it can go wrong, as much as other things can go wrong, and that when it goes wrong, you can experience pain, because it's not asking parts of your body to work in the right way, or it's not sort of sensing into it.
Yeah.
So if you can talk a little bit more about how the nervous system does control movement and how
Mhm.
it can go wrong, that would be really, really interesting.
Well, your brain moves your body. A muscle doesn't do anything unless the brain tells it to do that thing, and muscles are just this pulley system between the joints. So yeah, that your brain needs to ask it to do it, and all these the system throughout your body of nerves are just electrical signals going through your body, and if you don't do something, let's say you don't wiggle your pointer finger for, I don't know, let's say a year, then
Yeah.
your brain is going to the signal, the pathway for your brain to signal for that finger to move is going to start to die out. Like if you don't have water running down the tunnel just starts to cave in. So same thing, if you don't have electricity going through those nerves, then they'll just start to bypass even going through there at all. So then you can't move that finger because there's nothing wrong with the muscles. They
and
probably wasted away a bit, but the problem is in your brain.
and your brain has thought, well, I don't need to do this, so why
Yeah,
would I put
yeah,
any effort there
yeah.
myself, as it
That's
were?
right. And we call it an adaptation. That's an adaptation. And then things might change within the body because of that. But anyway, we can reignite those pathways. So you just either you force muscles to change, or the best thing to do is you move the joints relative to each other. So if you put your finger on a table and then you press down on it, you would make the joints move, and so you would make the muscles lengthen and contract, and then you would start to, you get movement back in the finger, and you start to find a connection from your head, your brain, down to those muscles again.
I've got a really specific question on that. So the glute muscle in your rear, the glute set of glute muscles, but I'll just say the glutes just
Mm-hmm.
for simplicity,
Yeah.
is really important for stability, for standing, for walking, for so many movements in the body, because it's kind of, I like to just see it's a central area,
Mm.
and
The big muscle,
it's a
the glute
big
max.
muscle,
Yeah,
exactly, and it's right next to those big muscles of the legs. It's a super important thing, and yet many people that I work with particularly find it very difficult to feel that muscle working. And yet I think it's one of those things that is really important to try to sense into. Have you got any
definitely.
advice about how someone can feel a muscle working like that again, to help make that connection? Or tell me if you think that's not necessary.
No, I do think it's necessary. I think it's difficult because when you can't feel a muscle, you don't know what it's doing, and you don't know what it's supposed to feel like. So again, it's back to repetitions of doing things. Like if you did a movement that like let's say a hip hinge, like this is like a mini squat, like you stand and then you just put a bit of slackness in your knees and then you push your bum to the wall behind you, you will create a hinge in your hip. Like your torso will fold over, your bottom will go back, and your bottom will go sharp. I was thinking like kind of a sharp. Your
Yes, like a
bum
big
sticks back.
lever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if you did that lots of times, and then you even did it holding a weight, that you don't need to, you've got your own body weight. If you did that 50 times, you would feel your glute max.
I bet you
You
would.
would. Yeah. So just
I
something
think
like
you'd also
that.
feel your legs and your yeah.
Definitely. But I think if people can't feel it, you need to do
Yeah.
something like that so then they can
Okay.
actually feel. There is an issue with the glutes though. People generally have their glutes are off. We are we don't really stand in alignment. I think that's one of the main problems with the glutes. So if you got someone to stand on axis, so meaning that your pelvis is over your heels, your rib cage is over your pelvis, your head is over your rib cage, then and then you try to walk around like that, then you would feel more of your glutes. A lot of people walk and their hips are slightly forward of their bodies. Um, so yeah, if you lined yourself up on a wall, so you put your heels a few centimeters away from the wall, otherwise you will fall backwards and you need to make space for your bum muscles. And then you put your bottom on the wall, and then you put your rib cage on the wall, and then you put the back of your head on the wall, and then you try to soften the front of your body because you'll be there very rigid first of all. So you try to drop your chin into your chest and drop your ribs down. So what we want is length through the back of the body. Then just try and push your head up the wall so you've got lots of length, but then make sure that you keep feeling the wall with your both bum cheeks and both sides of your back, and then step away from the wall trying to keep that position. Then most people will think that their bottom is too far back.
Yeah.
They'll feel that
They're going to
they'll feel
topple
very wrong. Yeah,
and they're going to topple over
yeah.
backwards. Yeah.
And obviously that's the problem with wearing heels because then you have to have your pelvis forward. But yeah, if people start thinking walking around more like that, more upright with all their parts stacked, then they would use their glutes more. Also walking with the glutes, that's a big thing. You want to use your glutes when you're walking.
So let's jump in there about that right now then, because that's all to do with the technically called posterior push off.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of posterior as your bum and the back of your body, obviously, then tell us a bit more about that, because that also connects into the way the foot is working. So without getting too technical, understanding how someone can do that glute fire, because obviously when I speak to clients about this, I always say it as it's such an easy win, because if you're walking, you're getting a fire in that glute every single step. Boom, boom. No need to remember to do hundreds of reps of your hip hinge because you're just walking, but in a certain way. So
that's right. I think my main biggest instruction point for that, and the easiest instruction point, is just to push the world away as you're walking. So rather than thinking of walking as putting one foot down in front of you, so lifting a knee up, putting the foot down, and then your body following, think of walking as the foot behind you, pushing the world back so that you get propelled forward.
Propelling forward, yes. Yeah.
And the straighter that back leg is, the better. Most people cut off at the knee, so they push for such a small amount of time or no time, because actually a lot of people walk just stepping your
Small
legs
strides.
forward.
Yeah.
So push back hard behind you with a straight leg, and yeah, you will feel it in your bottom. It pulls at the bottom of your foot. You get a good arch forming at that point. It's a supinated foot, which is what we call it when the arch is high and it's a stiff foot. It's a stiff lever, and your calf muscles are all connected to your hamstrings. It's all going up the back of the leg to your glutes, and then they will fire. You walk like that, and then you want to feel your bum aching when you get home from a walk, rather than you're often, lots of people, it's the fronts of their thighs, their quads, because they're stepping forward rather than pushing back.
And I like to also couple it with thinking about being more upright in your upper body to be able to get that stride length, because we all see the bad to generalize, but an older person's shuffle where there's a forward lean and they're sort of falling through the movement to walk effectively, and basically already technically falling, and therefore the likelihood of falling is really high because they're already on the lean. So if they catch their foot on something, whoo, they're over. So learning to be more upright. And coupling those together, I have found that I used to be quite slow, not slow, but I was always behind my husband when I was walking, and thought, why can't I catch up? And it's just because he's taller and faster and then when I made those changes, because I had gone into the world of Katie Bowman and so on, I'm at his side and can sometimes push on past.
Oh yeah,
and
you're
it's
much more efficient, much more powerful. And with that, the stooping that you were talking about before, with that extension through the back of the leg, you should have an extension in the front of your hip, so a good stretch there, and you should have an extension through your spine. So actually you can't push off if you're stooped down looking at the ground.
Right.
You have to be upright, otherwise that push off is impossible. And that's it. Just your body shape just won't make it happen. So yeah, it's using all your back muscles. So it's great little tip.
And the big toe in this, because obviously when people wear more rigid soled shoes, it's really difficult for their foot to move within the shoe to push off well. So, it's making that job that we've just talked about, those easy wins, harder. But it's also impacts the way the big toe moves. And again, it seems like the smallest thing. And when I talk to people about the importance of how your big toe moves and the mobility in your big toe, understanding that chain is quite a difficult thing to convey. And obviously, if you're in a more flexible soled shoe, then you can get that movement through the arch you were talking about, through the splay of the feet, toes you talked about, but also the big toe. So how do you sort of help people to get to link the fact that big toe is so key in the process?
Well, if you stand and just have your legs straight and lift all your toes up, not just your big toe, but all of them, then, and your big toe as well does work. It is the main toe, but what we want, when you push off behind you, push off through the whole width of the ball of the foot, so it's all your toes. But if you lift your toes up, you should see, and sometimes you don't, if a foot muscles need strengthening, then your arches lift. So that toe lift comes with an arch lift.
She looks down.
It's called the windlass mechanism.
Yeah.
It's a pulley system that should happen. So when you push off behind you, your toes are tucked. You haven't lifted your toes, but they're in that same shape. You've lifted your heel with your toes down. Then you get that arch forming there. So anytime your toes are higher than your soles of your feet, you should have an arch forming. And yeah, if your shoes are very stiff, or the soles of the feet are very thick, or both soles of your shoes, sorry, then yeah, it's not going to happen. I do want to kind of stress that there are people who wear shoes that are not barefoot shoes who don't have foot problems. But you are making the probability of that quite low. It is much, much more likely that you're going to have good foot function if your foot can move. Much, much, much. So yes, so you would want to be able to get that foot shape and get that push off of the ball of your foot.
Yeah. And this, and to sort of circle back, this is not just so that you don't get foot problems, but it's so that you don't get ankle problems, knee problems,
Hip
hip problems,
problems,
and
back.
let's keep going the whole way up.
Yes.
I was fascinated to see something that you wrote about in relation to the jaw and how the function of your jaw can really affect other things in your body. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the jaw has a huge impact on the spine. I mean, your jaw really almost can be thought of as part of your spine. And when your lower jaw, it's the lower jaw that's the movable bit, when that's forward of your top jaw, so of your top teeth, so when you have what is effectively an underbite, you change the flexibility down your spine. And when it's retracted, when your bottom jaw is further in, then so your top teeth come way over it, that also changes flexibility of your spine, but the other way. So yeah, a lot of jaw issues and back problems are related. As we get older, our jaw tends to sink backwards. It's much more effortful to keep your jaw forward. So actually, that's quite a good tip, is just you could try to do little resisted jaw exercises, like you put your hand on your chin and you try to push your jaw forward, and you just do little, just a small amount of resistance. You're just trying to jut your jaw forward. But also be conscious of your tongue position, because your tongue and your jaw are very related, they're interconnected. So when your tongue is stuck on the roof of your mouth, where it should live, then you get this tensioning in the muscles down your neck and in your jaw muscles. So that's also a good thing to do, is to practice, or at least be conscious of, where your tongue position is, like where your tongue is located.
I've got a little story that is kind of goods and bads on that one, where and I know the episode number. In fact, episode 10, I was talking to my good friend Jane Tarrant about tongue position, because she came on to talk about retraining your breathing habits for optimal health. And I have been through her course. And they're talking about tongue position. We were talking about this with my son. All of them have had to have braces. So it does affect the mouth versus nose breathing and so on. And I talked about the tongue position in terms of how it affects your jaw. And one of my sons said, "Oh yes, it's actually on TikTok, because they talk about putting your tongue into the roof of your mouth so that it makes your neck look better."
Nice posture.
Oh,
well, yeah.
So I thought, well, okay, good, because that's going to improve the breathing.
Whatever gets the point across.
Exactly.
If we're looking for looking good, fine. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
That's funny.
And maybe stick with that for life, because then you'll breathe well. It is interesting how things sort of get changed.
We're all about aesthetics. Well, there is that though. A part of all of this is that it does actually look better. Tighter muscles
changes that neck. And going back, I was interested by what you're saying about so back into walking, about the gait cycle, and how you were saying there were the different phases of the cycle. And you said at the beginning you would video someone and stop the video. So what is it, when you're looking at that, you're looking at the way all the different parts move in relation to each other? Is that right?
Yes. So you look at there is a position that your part should be in when you're in each phase of gait. So when your knee bends, your foot is on the floor, your knee bends, your ankle should also be bent, your hip will also be bent, your spine should be whatever extent. There's actually two different positions, and when your right leg is forward, for example, your left arm should be forward. So that shoulder the left shoulder blade is doing something different to your right shoulder blade, and your spine should be in a certain position in three planes. There's always three planes of movement that we look for: front to back, sagittal, side to side, frontal, and transverse, so the rotational. And so each joint should have a position in those 3 different planes that fit with the phase of gait that they're in. So it's mapped out. Gary Ward has mapped it out, and so you would then film them walking. Then there's apps on phones that you can use to stop video and slow it down, like change it by a millisecond. And so then you can, then just pause them in each phase of gait and then look to see whether the things are doing what they should be doing, because that's always what we're looking for, is looking for limitations, looking for blockages, looking for, that the movements not being related, not being connected. So then, you can often see then why they might have, I don't know, like an issue on the left side of their neck and also in their right foot. Something like that might be very much to do with each other. Because, your arms and legs are very much connected there with that reciprocal arm swing gait in your gait pattern.
So would you be doing that if someone would you always bring that into sort of assessing someone if they say they have a pain somewhere, or is this something you would use as a different tool for something else?
No, I use it a lot, but I would also just look at their basic assessments. Probably first off, their basic assessment. So when they first come, I would watch their pelvis rotate in each direction, their rib cage, their head, watch their pelvis tilt in each direction, their rib cage, their head, have them stand on one foot, see how they handle that, see them put one foot forward with the other and then move their weight over that foot, see what happens there. And all of those, I'm looking for movements that are much more than others. So if imbalances in size of your body will give you quite a lot of information about people. So if they can rotate their hips left but not right, then it kind of, so hips rotating right, that's a left leg forward position. So then you think, okay, if they can I don't know what I said now, but if they can rotate their hips right well, and that means that they can get their left leg forward well. But let's say they can't rotate their hips well left, then they won't be able to get their right leg forward.
So to make it to make it more sort of basic in a sense, when people are one side dominant, which pretty much everyone is, over years and years of, let's say, overuse through one side, is it fair to say that often patterns will be better, their ability to move one way in relation to that one-sidedness than the other, because they are, for example, always doing things on that side and looking a certain way because of that handedness?
Yes. Well, not necessarily because of the handedness or the footedness.
Okay.
But it is worth being aware, if you are right-handed and right-footed, then you do want to be aware of the fact you are favoring one leg. But yes, any repetition of something that is not reciprocated on the other side, that is not mirrored on the other side, will lead to adaptations
and imbalance,
and then imbalance, and then dysfunction, and then dysfunction is muscle tension and joint compression, and that equals pain and discomfort. So you might have the pain and discomfort, you might have had the imbalances growing for 15 years,
decades,
yeah, but you also may have developed them because you tripped over a step 3 days ago, so it's not, it's some things are slow burners and some things are quick.
And I wanted to also ask you about to understand better the difference. So people sort of band around the word mobility a lot, and I think there's a lot of understanding about flexibility, which is obviously passive length created by someone else, and not a lot of understanding of what makes up mobility. And I think you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, but understanding the importance of both length but also strength in
Mm,
a muscle to ensure that you have balance in the body.
yep.
Yeah. So I haven't got a specific question in the sense, but
No.
can you talk a bit about to help people understand the importance of a muscle both being long and
And short.
strong,
Yeah. So
and
muscle.
how and in a way describe it by showing how that shows up when it's not.
Okay. Muscles need to lengthen under load. So when you're using them, like if you move your arm around and you are not holding a bag of shopping, it feels very different when you move your arm around when you are. So you want to be able to moving under load kind of gives us that strength idea. But every muscle in your body has an optimal length, and it also has an optimal shortness. So, and that depends on you. You know, everyone has different limb lengths and all sorts, and hypermobility issues and things. But that there's an optimal one that may not be actually apparent in you. So you may, let's say, let's go with a knee. Your knee may not bend. In fact, let's go with an ankle, because ankles are very often
Mm.
quite immobile and it has a big problem in gait. So if your ankle doesn't dorsiflex, that's when the top of your foot comes up towards your shin. If that is very limited movement, then you will have problems walking, because you can't roll through the foot and you can't lift the front of your foot up and your foot hits the floor. But sorry, I'm going off on a tangent now. I tend to do that.
And well, I was
It's
just going to
short.
actually add in, and you will struggle to be down low squatting and being
Yes.
able to stay. And I think a lot of people say, why do I always fall backwards
Mm,
in a deep squat? And it's often to do with actually a limitation, a lack of strength in the
yes.
front of the leg, but also a limitation
In the
in the
ankle.
angle
Yeah,
of
which
the
is interesting,
ankle.
because a lack of movement in the ankle is very often accompanied with the lack of movement in the hip, because of
Mm.
exactly that. Because you can't squat and you can't push off the ground properly behind you walking, and you can't pull the top of your foot. It's very much related. Hip tightness and ankle tightness. Very good idea to keep the flexibility of your ankles. And
Mm.
I can give tips if you want to,
Yeah.
for ways that people can do that. But I'll just go back to the muscle
Yeah.
question, because I
Yeah.
can't retain it all in my little brain. So the muscle one, if you have this length and shortening that's ideal for a muscle, then there is a middle of that movement. So there is neutral, or center, as Anatomy and Motion, Gary Ward calls it. Neutral is kind of a bandied around word as well, being that center of that movement. If your muscle, if you don't move that limb around very much, and it never really goes long much, and it never and it doesn't never really go short. Let's say you lengthen it more than you shorten it, the muscle will adapt, and it will be able to be long more easily than it will be able to be short, because you have not exercised the shortening side of it much. So then your neutral changes. It becomes nearer the lengthening side. So then you change where your center is. And what we're trying to do in all sorts of in my work and your work is we're trying to move that center back again. So we're trying to lengthen equally to contract, but also maximally each way to move your center movement, your neutral movement, back to actual center. That's what we're always trying to do. I hope that answers the question. I think I might have
And
gone off
it
piece a
does, no,
bit.
absolutely it does. And also to um allow us to have stability in the whole all our movement patterns,
Yes.
joints in relation to joints, but also stability in general in our body, and
Yes.
stability meaning the control we have over those movements, so that we are not suddenly losing control of our
Mm.
movement at the end of a range. So we all know um, the feeling, if you don't sort of control sitting down, particularly let's say in a low chair, where there's potentially a sort of a last part of the phase where you might feel a thump down.
Fall, yeah.
Or the same thing if you're getting down on the ground and you're lowering a back knee down in a wide split stance, and you suddenly feel potentially that there's a sort of a loss of control. And I think that's a really common thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good example of saying it's that what we're wanting always is to have the control of our body in a whole variety of movement patterns so that we feel more stable.
Yeah, we feel more stable, and that equals strong that's what we call strong, is
Yes.
the ability to do stuff. And yeah, and if anything you lose in one joint or anything you lose in one muscle affects other muscles in your body.
Yes.
Nothing ever stands alone. So you are always working a system. And yeah, we want longevity. We want to keep our movements going for as long as we can, keep whatever joint action we can do as long as we can for safety reasons, for living pain-free, and also for having fun and living life and
doing
going
the
off
things
for
we
walks,
love to do, and not feeling limited because, I don't know if I can do that because something in my body might not work, or I'm nervous it won't support me in what I want to do, which I think everyone knows.
Yes. So then you do these natural movement classes or Pilates. I mean, I call my classes Pilates movements, but actually what we do is a lot of natural movement and a lot of moving mindfully and trying to see whether left matches right, and trying to increase the range of every joint and contract and lengthen, and people therefore feel stronger. I mean, strength is a funny word. I mean, isn't it? Do we want to lift a 10-ton barbell, or do we want to walk efficiently
but I think
peacefully?
I think it's
strength.
That is strength. That is absolutely. I think it's about feeling strong, not necessarily being strong in the sense that you're discussing.
I think it's about efficiency and easefulness.
Yeah, and confidence that you can. And I think that comes from thinking, if I need to recruit my body to do a certain thing, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do it. Even if it's at baseline, I'm pretty sure I can give that a go. Definitely. Rather than it not being.
And then it has a knock on, doesn't it? Because then if you can do that, now you've managed to get onto the ground. So now you can do that on the ground. There's more that you can do because you could do the thing before. You give yourself far more option.
Yeah. And then you get strong enough to get up off the ground. And you feel, a lot of people get up and down off the ground absolutely easy. An awful lot of people don't. And yet, if you can regain that strength, which is entirely possible, definitely, you feel good from being able to do that. And hopefully, if you're a part of my world, you keep doing it every day. That's right. So that you can keep doing it. So it'd be really useful to just have a couple of tips about ankles, because they are really, really important. They probably are not thought about so much. And often, people do get more foot pain or pain other places and don't talk about them. So it'd be very useful, given that it is such a critical joint, to have a couple of tips for people to take away from this conversation.
Okay, that's a good one, because the ankle is very important. It needs to be mobile, but it also needs to be strong. You don't want a floppy ankle. You don't want your ankles to roll in, roll out. So it needs to be both those things. And the ankle moves the foot, and the foot moves the ankle, and the ankle moves the leg, and the leg moves the ankle. Like the ankle is the junction between the ground and the rest of your body. So it's a really important place to work on. So yeah, I think something that I give a lot of people to do if they have any sort of foot issues is just to step one foot forward in front of the other. So like you're just taking a short stride.
Yeah.
And then just move your weight onto the front foot and move your weight onto the back foot. And that's all you're doing. And you're moving your weight by bending your front knee. That's all you're doing. You're not bending the back leg at all.
And both feet are flat on the ground as you're doing this?
Both feet are flat on the ground. Okay. And you try to line your feet up. Like, we don't really want feet turned out, because turned out feet are turned out hips, and then turned out hips are you'd be squashing on your sacrum, like squashing into your lower back. So you have feet lined up, and then you can increase the length of that stride as you go. So you can start really small, and but you want to move your whole body forward over that front foot, and that is just bending and straightening that front ankle. That's all you're doing. And the back heel may lift up, or it may not, depends on the length of your stride.
And
But
trying to stay upright in the rest of your body?
yeah, try to stay upright. You're not moving any. The only thing you're doing is bending your front knee. That's the only thing you're doing. And when you bend that front knee, your front ankle will bend, your arch of your foot should lower, and your glute loads up of that front leg. So all you're doing is stepping onto that leg, but it just practices that one move.
Can you see me doing it now?
Yeah, you can see you doing it now, yeah. So I think you want to do it like 20 times on each leg, and do it often. You don't want your toes gripping the ground. That's very important. And you don't want your toes lifted. Your toes are just long and soft on the ground so that your foot can change shape.
And can I ask about the knee? So obviously a lot of people talk about the tracking of the knee when you move.
Yeah.
Should you just let the knee do what it wants to do, or should you think
I
about
would definitely
aiming?
let it do what it wants to do, and then but if you see it really rolling in, so it's coming more in than your big toe, or really more out, most people go in, then correct it. But I wouldn't correct it. I would just do it first of all.
Yeah.
And you can always just look at yourself in the mirror doing it and just check that your knee's all right. And if you see it wildly going in, then you want to make it go over your second toe. But I don't make it do anything if you needn't. So it might not even be an issue. So
I love how simple that is. That's brilliant.
Very simple. It's a huge thing because it will move the bones at the back of the foot. So there's this complicated web of bones in the back of the foot, and they're all fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. And when the ankle moves, those bones at the back of the foot move, and then they move the bones at the front of the foot. But they won't move if your toes are gripping the ground or if you're not letting your knee bend. So that's all you're doing. So that's a mobility thing. It's very simple, very effective. And then strength things, there's obviously like heel raises. You just stand and you lift your heels up and down, go onto tiptoes and down again. And you can do those on a step. So you put the balls of your feet on the bottom of your flight of stairs, and then you lower your heels below the step, and then you lift as high as you can above. And here you just want to try and keep your toes soft, and that is a really good ankle strengthener because you're strengthening the whole foot goes stiff.
And it's hard, actually,
Really
to
hard.
do a number of repetitions of that. You will feel it.
So I think what you should do is just do as many as you can do. And it may be 3, but it will increase over time. And then you take one foot off and you do it on a single leg. And then you'll know about it. You'll think, okay, I can only do 3. And then over time, you'll be able to do more. But that's a really good one. And
is it okay for people to hang on to the banister when they're doing it so that it's not all about balance? Yeah.
Hold on, but don't pull yourself up.
Yeah.
So the foot's
so
doing the pushing up, but
gentle
you're just
touch.
Definitely you can hold on. Yes, that's it's quite an effective exercise. That
very
really strengthens your foot. If you have flat feet, so your arches tend to be low, then doing those heel raises, you'll really see differences in your arch height.
And so just to be quite specific, you're hanging onto the step with the balls of your foot.
They can be quite solidly on. So your heels are off.
It's just
I could get you a foot and show you, but nobody could hear that. So you've got the balls of your feet on, your toes are on, and then your arches and your heel is off. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're not hanging off the edge. You're quite definitely on with the balls of your feet.
Okay. Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay.
And I think you're going to give us another one.
Well, the other thing is to do. Well, there's 2 more I can think of actually. One is to just do squats. So you have your feet aligned and you have your knees aligned. That's with your hips, and then you just bend your knees, push your bum backwards, bend your knees, go down as low as you can go. Hold on to something in front of you if you want. Just go down and then come up. Do loads of those. So again, you're not pulling yourself up and down with your hands, but your hands are just stopping you from falling.
Yeah.
And you're just bending your ankles and bending your hip and bending your knees.
Yeah.
So they all bend and they straighten. You just keep your weight even over your feet as you do that.
And I think just to add a little thing there, I think a lot of what we do through daily life, so if we're going down to pick something up off the ground, will often articulate through the spine and therefore miss that lovely opportunity to
Yes.
use your hips and your knees
Yes.
because it feels like harder work. We've got these lovely long dangly arms that also, with that beautifully articulated spine, get us most of the way down, potentially, especially if you spread the legs wide. But just trying to think sometimes, no, I'm going to pick it up a different way.
Yes.
Can mean that you're not having to do this as an exercise. You're just picking something up off the ground, but you're doing it differently.
Definitely. I think what people worry about, people find that if they can't do something well, they don't do it at all. So just do it to what you can do. So if you're only squatting down, and this could be a split squat as well, so one foot is behind the other, and if it's only to get something off, let's say a chair height, then so be it, but you're still doing it. And then eventually it will be the coffee table, and then eventually it will be the floor. But don't not do it because you think, I'm crap at it, so I won't do it.
Yeah.
It's pointless. You've got to, you want to keep doing what you can do, and bodies adapt. I've seen many people make massive changes, and I emphasize again, really, you can be 80, you can be 90, you still can change. And then the last one I was going to say was calf stretches. So this is just when you put the ball of your foot up on something, as Katie Bowman loves a calf stretch.
She does.
You put the ball of your foot on something. So people do it on a half roller, but it could be a tree branch or something, or a twig not a twig, maybe a log in the garden, and your heels on the floor. And then you have a straight leg and you try to bring your hip over your heel. So you're trying to get your leg vertical. And then you do that with that straight leg, but you also bend your knee, because when you bend your knee, then you're going to pull at that, uses the muscle lower down your calf, the soleus, and it pulls at your Achilles tendon. And then you really know about that, and you really feel it in your ankle. That's the bending of the knee. But do it straight legged and with a bent knee.
And that last one you're talking about that gets into the Achilles, that range can seem so much less that almost people are like, am I even doing this at all? It's a really clear one
about to make people
limitation.
feel better about that, your ankle, as long as your ankle can bend 10 degrees, it can work.
It's doing well.
Yeah. I mean, what we want is more than that. I think we're looking for 30 or something, 30. I can't remember exactly, but about 30.
But it's still a small angle, isn't it?
10 is good. It's small. So don't think that if it doesn't lift much at all, it's rubbish. But you need to be able to, you need to keep that going, and also to increase it if you can.
And if the foot is already up on a dome or a block or some sorts, you've already got an angle there. By just the very lean forward, you've already getting that. So then when the knee bends, you're getting even more. Yeah. Amazing tips. Thank you, Rachel. That is absolutely brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned loads, and I hope, I'm sure everyone has as well. That's fantastic. So many tips. Love it to be really practical. So that was super helpful. So, Rachel Tyler Movement on Instagram, is that right?
That's right, yes. That's my
absolutely go and follow Rachel, because so many fantastic tips. And just briefly tell us about if people think, I need a bit of Rachel's magic, where can they find you?
Well, they can contact me through Instagram or on my website, racheltyler.com, RACHELTYLER.com, just to be exact.
Yes.
And they can email me through there. And I do see people online. If I would push people towards a movement person near them if they could. I do think live is better, but absolutely online is not a waste of time. Absolutely not. It's just maybe just get a little bit less done. But I'm always happy to see people online, or point them towards someone, or give them some tips, or maybe they're near enough to me and they can visit.
Yeah. That's brilliant. As I have sent someone to you, I think, in the past as well, because especially if you know that someone is nearby, and you know someone good, that recommendation is worth so much. I think, absolutely.
And seeing people in person is then you
so
can actually
much better.
feel your body. Yeah,
it's true. Rachel, thank you so much for all your amazing wisdom, and thank you for your time today.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.